When you're working in this type of operation, nobody knows where you are. My family never knew where I was. You have one handler who wakes you up and puts you to bed. You are living by your wits.
I do not know you, but I am your brother.
You do not know me, but I am your protector.
I will run into a burning building to save your life.
Though I do not know your name, I will take a bullet for you.
Though we've never met,
I believe in duty and sacrifice
of self.
Your family is my family.
Is my family. Your life is my duty.
What's going on, guys? It is time for another episode of Behind the Uniforms. You all know by now how this show works. We invite a guest on who is, Leo, active, retired, first responder, veteran. Doesn't matter to us. They have whiskey to bring to share with the community. They have stories to tell. I'm not even going to do you the disservice of introducing you. Why don't you tell everybody who you are?
All right, thanks, Carl. My name is Ray Hassett. I'm a retired lieutenant from a inner city police department in Connecticut. We're not a big city, but we are a very busy city.
So you're retired, but you're not. You're just in a whole different ball game now, right?
Correct. I finished my 25 years in 2012, and a month later, I was working as a contractor in the Middle East, where I teach the art of hostage negotiation.
So you just couldn't not work.
You know, I learned so much from my career in my department. For the last 14 years of my career, I ran one of the busiest districts in my department, and I ran it a little bit differently than my colleagues who, as they began to move up the food chain, they went back into their office. I took my game to the street.
Awesome. And
I ran my district from my car, and it was, quite frankly, it was the best thing I ever did. It made me a connector instead of a reactor, and it was the basis of what I do today.
All right, so before we get into stories, let's whiskey. What do we
Sure.
have?
I brought you some Jack Daniels.
All right.
Number 7, and I chose that because it's strong and reliable.
Love it. Love it. And it is, you can't confuse anything else with Jack.
Sure.
Jack stands by itself. Everybody loves it. Excellent. All right, where do you want to start? Well, do you want to tell everyone about the business that you're doing now? Do you want to share some stories?
Would you like to pour?
I'd love to do the honors.
Well, let me start with my foundation. Law enforcement was my second career. My first career was a professional actor. And I did that for a while, and it wasn't enough. And at that point, I was a big reader of fiction. And I wanted a career where I would be in the stories. I wanted a career where I would have an impact on the ending of stories. And when I chose law enforcement, my dream was fulfilled. And suddenly I was in a world which, unbelievable. The amount of the extremes of human behavior, the stories, all of which you had a part in their ending and their beginning sometimes. So I think to that point, one of the most significant moments in my beginning of my career is when I was asked to leave law enforcement. And probably because of my career as a professional actor, I was offered the position of working deep cover in organized crime, which would entail me resigning and disappearing, being given a new identity, and then basically working my way into a certain group of people. I used all my skills I learned as an actor. I think it was an actor's dream. As a cop,
or nightmare.
As a cop, it was a nightmare, because when you're working in this type of operation, nobody knows where you are. My family never knew where I was. You have one handler who wakes you up and puts you to bed. You are living by your wits. And especially if people tell you that if we find out you're a cop, we're going to kill you. Working under that pressure daily, and I did this for 2 years. It not only does it change you forever, but it changes the way you look at people, the way you read people. Policing in general, I believe, we train police officers to be problem solvers. Once you're that deep in a group of people where your bad things can happen to you, you learn to watch people and to listen to people very carefully. You never make it about you. It's always about the other person. And that skill, which I developed really for my own survival, I have used all the way through my police career. In my police career, I had 3 different street names. First was the Evil One, second was Hassett, and the third was the Crazy Whisperer. And the Crazy Whisperer was the one that I took the most pride in, and that was in my last 5 years. By that time, I had learned that my role as a police officer was not about me, but it was about the other person. And I listened more than I talked. And by listening more than I talked, I got so much more. I got trust, I got information, I got safety, I got the ability to connect with people who were at their worst moments of their lives way before it started to happen. And that's the basis of how I train today.
Right, I gotta ask. I mean, I'm sure this is a question to people who are watching right now, which, by the way, everybody stop, pause this for a second, share this video, because these men and women deserve the recognition for the work that they're doing in our community. But how do you get out? I mean, here you are on camera right now. You were so undercover that you know, you had to resign your position. How do you get out and get to this point where you're not worried about fallout from the work that you did undercover?
Well, that never changes. But I think that by sharing the experience, I think it gives police officers and people watching a window on some of the things that we go through. When I came out of that operation, I knew a lot more about trauma.
Sure.
I knew a lot more about PTSD or PTS, post-traumatic stress. And I realized that we as an agency, we don't take care of that. We wait for people to crash and burn, and then we offer them services. Having been through an operation and an experience like that, I have a great deal of empathy for cops, our own family, as well as citizens, and as a hostage negotiator. If you aren't able to feel what that person at the worst moment of their life is going through, all you're going to be doing is talking. The training that we're giving today is teaching police officers how to listen. We already know how to talk. By slowing it down and listening to the emotion of the other person. All of us right now are driven by emotion. Politically, socially, fear, anxiety. Emotion drives us all, for good and for evil. And you know, when we as police officers enter into somebody's situation, we're expecting them to be able to tell us what the problem is so we can problem solve. The training that I give now is people may not be ready. I'm working on the first 3 minutes of learning to connect. And I think to quote your advertising model or motto, if you don't connect in the first 6 seconds, you're working at a disadvantage.
Sure. I mean, you'd also talked off camera earlier about personal space and distance. How do you, without giving away the secret formula, obviously, but how do you coach on that, given that 6-second barrier?
Well, I think traditionally we're trained to work in a reactionary gap, which is 4 to 6 feet. And that may not be the best place to work. You know, when a police officer responds to a call, we are trained to walk right in, and because we read people for threat, but we don't necessarily read them for behavior.
Sure.
And it may not be necessary to step into that gap, because once you step into that gap, it's very hard to back out.
Gotcha. Give me a positive takeaway, because you've dealt with some difficult stuff. You know, share with us, if you could, a positive experience or a motivational story or a success story.
Well, I think the success stories are the firsthand responses for the training we give. I think, you know, from police officers to, we're working now in maximum security prisons up in New York State, People are saying it's the best training they've ever had, or the best training they've had in 16, 18 years. These are old school, these are trained warriors that are saying, man, I never thought of it that way. And that to me is extremely encouraging, that I can help to make this career, which is a marathon. Mm-hmm. And I think my perception, my opinion is, a law enforcement career is like running a marathon. You know, we're going to get injured. We realize that physically, but we're not taking into consideration that we're going to be injured mentally. And a lot of times as you come to the end of your career and you talk to cops, you say, well, how many more times you got, how much time do you have left? And the officers will say, well, I got 3 months, 2 days, 4 hours, and 5 minutes. Well, that tells me that at the end of that tunnel, that light may not be the light of relief. It may be a train coming at you.
Sure.
You know, in law enforcement, 2 things we use the most are our feet and our heads. We always get new boots, but we don't take care of our heads.
Let me ask you this. We look and see everything that's going on right now. We had a guest on the show a week ago from the Ferguson riots. Yes. We see what's happening all across the country, really. We see it down in Charlottesville. We see it up in Boston. In Boston, the officers were told, don't wear helmets because it's too scary and intimidating. In environments like that, where there's so much reaction that's happening and you're sitting on a powder keg, how do you de-escalate a situation like that en masse? Can that be done?
Well, I mean, when it gets to that point, if you have 2 groups who are passionate about their beliefs, I mean, if you take it a step back, well, what good is a demonstration going to do? I mean, if you're a plus and I'm a minus guy, and we yell at each other mm-hmm. and throw signs and scream at each other, etc., we're going home more strengthened than ever in our position.
Yep.
We're not changing behavior. So by the time it gets to that point where the crowds are facing each other, you got to have tactics, okay? What I saw in Charlotte, I didn't see much tactics. What I saw in Boston was clean. They had extraction teams. They were able to restore order very quickly, separate people. You don't want to deal with people when they're emotional.
Sure.
Okay, because they can't think. So then you have to have a strategy. So, you know, once you have a strategy, separation, et cetera, okay, everybody's had a chance to vent, it's safe, and they go home. That's what they remember. If you strategically and tactically handle it correctly, they're going home. That's the end of their story for that day. If it's a riot and cops are running after people and falling on each other and getting injured in polyester piles trying to correct order, there's no plan there.
Right. So it seems like you're the guy to bring it together. How can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more?
If you go to Ray Hassett, www.rayhassett.com. You'll see my website. Just give me a bell. I'd love to come out. We're training all over the place. It's good stuff, and it's going to make you better.
And any message that you want to leave to America?
Slow it down. Take a step back. Think before you act.
Well, I'll toast to that. Sir, thank you for coming on the show. Those of you who are watching, again, please take a moment to share this. This is the way that we create that beacon of light, to share these stories and to let people know that the men and women behind these uniforms are just like us. They just want to go home to their families every single day. So God bless America. We'll see you in the next episode.
Cheers.
Cheers.